Today, I think the adage is everybody has at least one business in them. Given the right environment, the right mentors, the right resources, the right support network, and I think you have that. I know you have that here at SDSU. I've been very, very impressed with what you're doing on the entrepreneurial side. And I would argue, and will argue over the next hour, that all of us are entrepreneurs, like it or not. Don't think of yourself as an employee. Think of yourself as an independent contractor. And you're going to be zigging and zagging from one opportunity to the next, learning new skills, constantly retraining to make yourself as employable as possible. I also want to thank Jennifer, and I want to thank Craig for taking me on a tour of the campus today and a tour of the town. I still want to hear more about Dirty Lil, but another time. So, shocking news. I do not have the answer key. But here's the thing. Nobody has the answer key. And all those people you look up to, the entrepreneurs that maybe you look up to and admire, they're making it up as they go. There is no answer key. And if you're not failing, if you're not making mistakes, it could mean that you're not really trying. Everybody fails as they try to launch a business. Nobody gets it right on the first try. It's a little like dating. How many of you got it right on the first try with dating? My God. Growing up, your parents said, well, do what you love. If you love it, chances are you're going to be good at it. If you're good at it, the money will come. Has to be in this order. And this makes sense intuitively, right? Do what you love. Find a way to make a living from what you love. But this is not enough. You have to have a willingness to fail repeatedly. And that's hard because it's ingrained in our culture. Nobody wants to be a failure, right? Everybody wants to be a success. But when you're an entrepreneur launching a business, and I think Craig and I think everybody at this table will agree that you fail and fail and fail until you succeed. Nobody has the answer key. And today, I'm not worried about the Chinese. I'm worried about artificial intelligence. I'm worried about computers that will be a whole hell of a lot smarter than we will be within 10 years. So what can I do that is not going to be automated, outsourced, or performed by robots within 10 to 20 years? How do I keep adding value? What can I do that a computer can't do? Creativity. Maybe 30 years down the road, computers will be creative, but I would argue that the one thing that we bring as people to the table is creativity, new ways of connecting the dots, new ways of adding value. The old model, what Craig and I grew up with, get your degree and you're going to be doing the same thing for 40 years. You're going to be making the same widgets in your cubicle for 40 years. The new model, for most everybody in this room under the age of 25, odds are you will have 2 to 3 different careers and 1 to 2 dozen jobs along the way. So this notion that you get your degree, you're set for life, and you're going to be doing the same thing for 40 years, it's not going to happen. That's a vestige of the 1950s. Fax machines and 8-track tapes and the Bee Gees. It's not coming back. Note to self, disco is not coming back, and you will have a lot of jobs and probably a couple of careers along the way. So your degree from South Dakota State doesn't mean you're at the finish line. It means you're at the starting line. But you graduate with skills, you graduate with contacts, you graduate with confidence, and you know that you're going to have to keep learning new things. And that's a hard lesson, but it's, I think, a necessary lesson. And one of the reasons I think, personal opinion, there's so much paranoia today, unease, mistrust, angst, is because the treadmill is moving faster. Industries are being disrupted faster than ever. There is no such thing as a safe, secure job. Show me any job that's safe, that isn't in the process of being disrupted by the internet, by automation, by international trade. Every industry is being disrupted. All of us are entrepreneurs. All of us are perpetual learning machines. It's good to have a plan. If you launch a business, you start off with a business plan, but you have to build flexibility into that plan. And chances are it's not going to go exactly the way you think, and you have to find a way to be okay with that. I worked in a business, the television business, which is being disrupted. Be honest with me, and please be honest. How many in this room watch local TV news every day? Okay, I'm glad I'm out of that business. Jeez. That's the problem. Because this has disrupted my business, the business I grew up on. Television, radio, print. We're all walking around with little supercomputers in our pockets. If it doesn't show up here, it's not relevant. But timing is everything, and I had a good ride. Television stations on the East Coast, in the Twin Cities, Chicago, but I never trusted the people I worked for. And I didn't want to be chained to the whole television news business for the rest of my life. I also like the intellectual challenge of launching a business. TV was my day job. It was a check every 2 weeks. But on the side, I was able to try some things. Plant seeds, experiment, tinker, launch a string of weather companies on the side. So 36 years as a meteorologist, working for national networks, local stations, wrote a book for Barnes & Noble called Restless Skies. Got a chance to work with people like Ted Koppel and Dan Rather. And I started and sold 3 companies in Minnesota. I'm now on my 4th and my 5th business. One business called Eris Weather, and a second business called X Weather, which is focused on data. I'm still trying to get it right. Meteorologists are always trying to get it right, and sometimes we do, many times we don't. How many people make a living predicting the future? You're a meteorologist? Okay. You understand the challenge. Okay. Economists, stockbrokers, palm readers. The anchorman I worked with at CCO in the Twin Cities, during the commercial break, he would always give me a hard time. He'd go, Paul, you really blew that forecast, that 7-day, what a crappy forecast. And I go, Don, you could dress up a monkey in a sport coat to tell people what happened earlier today. So why don't you try to predict what the news is going to be tomorrow? And then we'll be on a level playing field. Eris Weather, data, graphics, we have studios, we do things for the media, we consult with weather-sensitive companies, personalizing weather, and it seems like this is my lot in life, is to keep coming back for another bite at the apple How do we personalize weather and go from one size fits all, the model I grew up with, where you watch a little TV set and try to interpret, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my plans? To getting weather on a little supercomputer in your purse or your pocket. That's where we're going. Everybody will have their own weather channel, their own stream of personalized weather information. So basically, we sell APIs and SDKs to hundreds of websites, mobile developers, along with data streams. We try to help these developers be successful. And we have desktop software. We also have mobile software. We work for trucking agencies. In this case, we're predicting every 10 minutes whether the roads will be wet, slushy, snow-covered. This information is available in the cabs of these big trucks, and they can choose a different route. If you're stopped, and you're driving an 18-wheeler and you're stopped, you're not making any money. You have to keep moving. And so the whole idea is giving people intelligence to make smarter decisions, optimize their business, help them make more money. We have a company that we do business with in California called Rack.io, and they don't turn on a sprinkler until they check past weather, current weather, and predicted weather. If there's a big storm coming in off the Pacific, why on earth would you waste water? Netflix is a customer. They actually target ads based on what the weather is for your zip code. They have analytics that show if it's a cloudy, rainy, cool day that you're much more likely to watch a romantic comedy. Who knew? But we provide data via APIs to Netflix. We have a couple of consumer applications, one called Eris Pulse, P-U-L-S-E, Eris Pulse, and we're trying to personalize the weather experience. Again, with apps, with mobile, we've gone from a speech to a conversation, an ongoing narrative, and we can actually track hail and lightning and tornadoes and severe weather in general and give you updates every couple of minutes based on your GPS location. So everybody gets something different based on where they're located. It's not one size fits all. It's not your father or your grandfather's weather. Stare at a TV tube, try to figure out what the guy is talking about. Will it affect my plans? Everybody sees something different. And then we have weather-sensitive companies like Wells Fargo, Carlson Hotels. They don't like surprises. They want to know if any of their facilities are going to be impacted by extreme weather. We also set up studios and hired television meteorologists and launched a new channel called Weather Nation. And this was back in 2011 because the Weather Channel was not running much weather. They were running other How many of you have watched the Weather Channel in the last few years? You notice sometimes they don't have weather, they have programs, prospectors, fat guys in the woods. So we thought, maybe there's an opportunity for a channel, a weather channel that actually runs weather 24/7. And so we launched this from the Twin Cities. It's still up. It's still running for some reason, and it was an interesting ride just getting that thing off the ground. For the record, I'm an evangelical Christian. I'm a Republican. I'm an Eagle Scout. If it wasn't for Weather Merit Badge, I might have a real job right now. And we're a military family. My youngest son graduated from the Naval Academy. He flies, in fact, that's him. He flies helicopters in the Pacific. Very proud of Brett. And I also acknowledge I follow the data. As a businessman, if I'm not true to the data, if I only see what I want to see, I go out of business. And I acknowledge that the CO2 that we're pumping into the atmosphere inadvertently is actually warming up the atmosphere. It is warming, folks. You don't have to like it. And the atmosphere doesn't care what you think. The atmosphere responds to physics and the laws of nature, and I'm tracking it. And I've been talking about it since the late 90s. And it makes me crazy that people assume, well, you think the climate is changing, that must make you a crazy liberal. No. If you really take the time to look at the data, things are warming up. The oceans are warming, the atmosphere is warming, the polar ice caps are melting. That said, it's a threat and it's an opportunity to reinvent the way we do business, a chance to go back in and strengthen our infrastructure and make everything we do storm-proof, and then export that new technology to the rest of the world. So I've been talking about it since the late 90s, long before Al Gore came out with his documentary. And as a Christian, I think we have an obligation to take it seriously, to not look away, to not say it's a conspiracy or a liberal hoax. The data is the data. And I wrote a book with Mitch Hescox, who is a minister, a Methodist minister, and he's head of the Evangelical Environmental Network, and he worked in the coal business for 15 years. His dad was a coal miner, so he's had an up-close and personal experience with fossil fuels. And basically, we're trying to appeal to conservatives and evangelicals. Just keep an open mind. If you don't believe the climate scientists, and you don't believe the meteorologists or the ministers, do your kids a favor and believe your own eyes, because the symptoms are going to be harder to deny and dismiss over time. And we're seeing those symptoms. That said, I'm optimistic we're going to figure this out, but it's not probably going to come from Washington, D.C. It's going to be driven by economics and energy security. It's going to be cheaper to use solar, cheaper to use wind than depending on fossil fuels. It's already moving in that direction. So I'm optimistic. A serial entrepreneur, an entrepreneur who sets up a string of new ventures one after another, keep the capital costs as low as possible. And now we have this amazing tool with the internet where you have a global distribution platform that didn't exist 20 years ago. You experiment, you iterate, you remain flexible and creative, and you surround yourself with smart people who can do the things that you don't like to do or don't want to do. It's okay to be an opportunist. We're a nation of opportunists. That's what made America great. You see an opportunity, and you go for it. And as my father said, once you have all the information, the decision is easy. Gathering information, fine-tuning your idea, and taking advantage of this amazing tool, the internet, to do your fine-tuning, to get it right. Again, as I said, I think everybody has at least one business in them. If you have the right resources, the right mentors, and most importantly, a willingness to experiment and fail. And fail and fail until you succeed. In Japan, from what I'm told, if you fail once, you're done. There's a stigma in some countries. And that's why many of these countries aren't as entrepreneurial. In the United States, there is no stigma. Every business is being disrupted. You guys remember Kodak? We all used Kodak film. You know, Kodak had the patents on digital cameras, and they purposely did not build a digital camera, even though they had the patents, because they did not want to cannibalize their film business. That put them out of business eventually. And even today, the NFL is being disrupted. CBS, Comedy Central is being disrupted. The New York Times, print. You know, my father growing up, he goes, Paul, if these businesses do not work, you can always get a job as a postal carrier. Thanks, Dad, for that vote of confidence. But the post office is being disrupted. FedEx, DHL, UPS. There is no sure thing. Nobody has the ability in perpetuity to be doing the same thing over and over again. Everybody has to innovate, reinvent, or fade away. It's a tough lesson, but that's the world we live in. And there used to be a name for this. We called it progress, right? We weren't afraid of it. We embraced it. Think about it. 110 years ago, our ancestors were all on horses, right? And the horse and buggy cabal did everything in their power to prevent this newfangled contraption called the automobile from actually being successful. We have a history, a global history of disruption, innovation, and reinvention. 88% of all the companies on the Fortune 500 list back in 1955 no longer exist. They're out of business. They're gone. So how do you keep adding value? How do you survive and thrive in this brave new world? What can't be cloned, copied, automated, or outsourced? I keep coming back to creativity, new ways to connect the dots, and experimentation, iteration, tinkering. This is what America does better than any country on earth. I had a great ride, mostly exhilarating, partly terrifying, more ups than downs, but there were plenty of downs. You have not experienced what it's like to be an entrepreneur until you have to make payroll, until you have to put more of your money, your personal money, your lunch money, your 401 savings into the business to make payroll so others can get paid so you still have a business tomorrow or next week. I started off at Penn State, where I got my degree in meteorology, radio stations. And each radio station paid a couple of $100 a month. So I was not getting rich, but it paid my way through college. And I liked the independence. And here's the thing. People get fixated on the money, and the money's fine. I know a lot of really rich people who are miserable, so you have to be really careful with money. It isn't going to solve all your problems. That said, I'd prefer having a little money to abject poverty. But what's even more enticing than the money is the freedom. Not answering to anybody else. That is what is intoxicating. Making your own schedule. Doing what you want to do. That's better than the money. Life is short. Some of this was born out of boredom, and I think a lot of inventions, a lot of innovations are born out of tedium and boredom. I was working at Care 11 in the Twin Cities, and they had flat two-dimensional maps, and I was bored to tears. I went to a conference in Reno, and the gentleman gave a presentation about three-dimensional TV weather graphics, and it looked like something Walt Disney whipped up. Flying through the valleys of Japan, simulated rain, like something out of the space shuttle. And I came back wondering, why can't a U.S. company offer this? The third programmer I went to, the third developer, was able to create Earthwatch. And we use silicon graphics hardware. Now you can do this on your iPad. Back then you needed fairly sophisticated computer hardware to be able to run these 3D simulations that took viewers into the weather. But it was a lousy business model. We'd sell software for $25,000, and then there was no money after that. So there was no recurring revenue. And you absolutely want to be in a business where there's preferably machine revenue, recurring revenue, subscription revenue. Every month you know what's coming in, so you can reinvest in the company with confidence. But I had one of my brushes with fame. One of Steven Spielberg's people called up and said, "Paul, we're making a movie about dinosaurs. It's called Jurassic Park, and we'd like to use your software to show this storm coming into Jurassic Park." By the time the storm hits, the dinosaurs escape, all hell breaks loose. So this was our software right here. This was Earthwatch running in the control room. And we actually used Hurricane Andrew imagery, and we draped that over this mythic Jurassic Park. And by the way, every company, I've always had a CEO, somebody who's really good with spreadsheets and P&L statements and all the stuff that I hate, so I can focus on the creative side. And the CEO thought I was nuts for volunteering to do this. Why are you taking hundreds of hours of development time to work for Steven Spielberg? I said, I think it's going to be good marketing. And then we tried to send an invoice to Steven Spielberg. We tried to send him a bill. And they called up and they said, oh, we can't pay this. We're not paying anything for this. I said, I was incredulous. Wait, we're doing all this work for you, for this movie, and you're not going to pay anything? He goes, oh, no, we can't pay anything. You're Steven fricking Spielberg. I don't think I put it quite that way, but I was speechless. He said, here's what we're going to allow you to do. You can send out a press release with your name and Steven Spielberg's name. That will be enough. And you know what? They were right. It was. People thought, hey, if it's good enough for Steven Spielberg, it's good enough for a television station in Sioux City or Des Moines or the Twin Cities. And then 2 years later, they called up and said, Paul, we're making a movie about tornadoes. We'd like to use your software in Twister. I drove down to Ames, Iowa, where they did the filming of the control room scenes. All the weather geeks, the meteorologists running around trying to track the tornadic storms. And I show up and they go, hey, Paul, you want to be in the movie? Yeah, we're serious. Paul, you want a line in the movie? And I'm thinking, love scene with Helen Hunt. They were not thinking that. He said, no, Paul, you're looking at the Doppler radar. The F5 is just starting to spin up, and you say, hey, Bryce, you better come here and take a look at this. Personally, I think it's the highlight of the whole movie, but nobody else seems to think so. So, I still get residual checks from Warner Brothers twice a year. And it's a special feeling walking back from the mailbox. You got an envelope from Warner Brothers. Here's my last check. If you remember nothing else, just remember life is a farce, and it will take twists and turns that baffle you. And just hold on, because there may be a reason why you're going in that direction. But the Jurassic Park and Twister stuff did help. It helped us move hundreds of units. So, strange. So I sold that business for about $3 million because it was a lousy business, because the business model itself was bad. We didn't have data. We didn't have the fuel that went into the three-dimensional model. So we didn't have any recurring revenue. So it was hard to reinvest in that kind of a business. So another weather company came along, made us an offer, and we sold and put most of the proceeds back into a new business with the goal of personalizing the weather. Because we know there can be amazing variations in weather. And I know that's certainly the case here in South Dakota. Jay Trobeck is a friend of mine down at Kello, and he, we commiserate stories about how a difference of 20 miles can make the difference between no snow and 12 inches of snow, or no rain and 7 inches of rain. You know, farmers always come up to me and talk about these crazy variations. So I thought, why can't we personalize the weather based on somebody's GPS location? And we set out to do that. We tried to do a better job than NOAA, the National Weather Service, and create a short-range, higher-resolution 12-hour forecast, the Nowcast. And we actually were able to do this, believe it or not, come up with a more accurate forecast. So we thought, well, consumers will obviously pay for this. We were wrong. We raised $8 million, $5 million from a strategic partner in the television business, $3 million from friends and family, including the anchorman I worked with. He wrote out a check. The guy I sat next to every day doing the news. My mother-in-law. If you remember nothing else from tonight, you're launching a company. Do not take money from your mother-in-law. Bad idea. Every time I'd go back home, she's like, so Paul, have you pissed away my money yet? No, Nana, I'm working on it. Almost gone. We went from 50 people down to 4 people in the span of 1 week. I had to let go 46 people. We blew through $8 million. We literally stepped off a cliff. And if the landlord hadn't renegotiated our lease, we would have had to declare bankruptcy. He did renegotiate the lease. And we had all this infrastructure, we had all these computers, all these models, but it was a bad business model. We couldn't get anybody to pay for this slight increase in accuracy. So what do we do now? Do we fold up? Do we give up? Go home? We thought about it long and hard for a few days and realized that maybe there's an opportunity to focus on the user experience, on the phones. Forget accuracy. The weather forecast is always going to be wrong, right? The 7-day. But maybe we can get more information, especially Doppler radar, onto the phones. And so in 2001, long before Android, long before iOS, we had black and white Doppler radar on a Nextel phone, and we charged $1 a month. But thankfully, there were a few 100,000 people that wanted this. The business scaled, and we went from no revenue in '02 to about 700,000 in '05, 2005. And Garmin came along and said, we like what you're doing. We think this is a strategic fit with where we are going. We like your developers a lot. We appreciate what you've built. And we sold the business to Garmin. This was literally a year before Steve Jobs came out with the iPhone. And we were worried that that was going to change everything. And you know what? It did. We went from being one of 4 weather companies on phones. Now there are thousands of weather apps, and most of them are free. So it's a tough business. Timing is everything. And the old adage, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. Knowing when to get in and when to get out is an art form. And I don't have the answer key. We got real lucky selling when we did, right before the bubble burst in '08. And CBS was trying to save money. Advertising was going off a cliff. People were already checking the internet, not watching television news. Advertising was shifting to mobile. Would local TV go the way of AM radio? And on April Fool's Day, I got laid off, downsized to cut costs. So suddenly my day job, my steady check, my sure thing was no longer a sure thing. After the shock and awe wore off, I thought, well, now what? And the theory was that we could go into the outsourcing business, white label weather, that we would set up studios, hire meteorologists, and do our own weather reports for TV stations, but do them for less money. and offer this as a service to TV stations. And it didn't quite work out that way. We started off with this white label weather concept, and we were able to create content, good content, quality content, for about a third of what local TV stations were doing. But the real opportunity, turns out, was this national weather channel, which I did not see coming. And that's the thing about business. You have to build flexibility into your plan. It never, ever, ever works out exactly the way you think it will. Michelangelo said every act of creation is first an act of destruction. Abraham Lincoln, best way to predict your future is to create it. Andy Grove was being optimistic when he said only the paranoid survive. If you're not a little bit paranoid, you're probably not paying attention. It's good to be paranoid. Man plans, God laughs. It's good to have a plan, but be careful what you wish for. But today, it's never been easier to launch a new business. We live in the era of the big idea. Do you guys know what a BHAG is? That is the first personal computer, 1952. Look at this thing. It came with a steering wheel. That's pretty cool. BHAG is a big, hairy, audacious goal. And everybody should have a BHAG. So some of the trends today: empowering people, personalizing, turning software into a game, the whole sharing economy. Look what's happening with Uber. Exponential growth in storage and bandwidth, and putting proprietary layers on top of open source software. I don't want to say there are shortcuts, but there are tools out there today that can accelerate what you're doing, especially if your interest is in apps or software as a service. A couple of books, there are three that come to mind. Peter Thiel wrote one, 0 to 1, which is really an excellent book. His point, it's a little counterintuitive, but he said that competition drives profits to zero. You don't want to be in a commodity business where you wake up every day and go, oh, now there's another competitor, and now I have to drop my costs again. You want to create a benevolent monopoly, but not call it a monopoly. Google is a benevolent monopoly. Apple, you could argue, is a benevolent monopoly. How do you keep sustained profits? What major problem are you trying to solve? Create something unique. Don't create something a little bit better, a little bit cheaper, a little bit faster. What major problem are you trying to solve? Eric Ries, The Lean Startup, another fabulous book I highly recommend. Don't agonize over your service or your product. Get something out there. Get a beta out into the field and iterate. Give it away. Build, measure, learn. Build, measure, learn. Your business is a learning machine. You are a learning machine. And you're going to be in perpetual beta as long as you're in business. But get stuff out there. Talk to your best customers. What do they like? What don't they like? What do they use? What don't they use? What's bloatware? What's missing? But get something out there. And I would also read Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn, the startup of you. He also talks about beta. He calls it permanent beta. We are all works in progress. I like that. McKinsey and Company, the automation bomb could destroy 45% of the work activities currently performed in the U.S., representing about $2 trillion in annual wages. And people think that it's only robots, blue-collar jobs. White-collar workers may imagine that they're safe, but that's wishful thinking. If computers can be programmed to understand speech as well as humans, 66% of jobs in finance and insurance could be replaced, the most recent report says. Here's the thing. Through the arc of history, some jobs go away. Industries are disrupted, but new jobs, new industries take their place. You guys have to be ready for the new stuff. It doesn't even exist today, but it's going to be wildly lucrative in 5 years. So how does any school teach students skills for jobs that don't exist today, but will exist? It's a willingness to keep learning, to keep refreshing, to not become stagnant, to not get your degree from SDSU and say, well, I guess I am all things to all people. Thank you very much. I'm ready. Here we go. You're at the starting line. Business models are going to change. And the key is experimenting. And believe me, I understand what it's like when you graduate, you want to get that first job, you want a salary. I get that. But here's the thing. Find a job, have a salary, but what you do in the evenings and weekends in your personal time is your business, and you should be tinkering on the side. Try some things while you still have the umbilical cord, while you're still cashing the checks. In your personal time, you should be setting things up and trying things. What I've learned the hard way, if it's obvious to everyone, if the cab driver is talking about this, forget it. The opportunity has passed. Follow the trends, connect the dots, and constantly reimagine the future. But build flexibility into your plans, because you're going to have to change on a dime. As new competitors arise, as new technology comes on the scene, collaborate. Being too early can be just as bad as being too late, and that's been one of my problems, is that we come up with these new concepts and we have to wait for the market to catch up to us. Experiment, daydream, reimagine, embrace your mistakes, be wrong as fast as you can. Encourage a culture of experimentation and disruption. Stay in stealth mode. Surround yourself with people who complement your skills. No one person can do it all. Not even Steve Jobs could do it all. Hang out with smart people. Embrace creative destruction and be okay with the fact that it's not going to work out exactly the way you think it is. The only edge is creativity and a willingness to disrupt yourself. Learn new skills, try again. One of my heroes, Thomas Edison, over 1,000 patents as he searched for a way to come up with a viable light bulb. Thousands of attempts, 10,000 different filaments before he found the filament that would actually work in the light bulb. And reporters gave him a lot of crap, and he said, I haven't failed. I've found 10,000 ways that don't work. Samuel Beckett, ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better. Beethoven's teacher said that he was hopeless as a composer. Rodin, rejected 3 times to the #1 school in Paris. His father said, I have an idiot for a son. Abraham Lincoln went to war a captain. He returned a private. He was demoted. Went on to do some pretty amazing things with the rest of his life. Sigmund Freud was booed from the stage when he gave his first dissertation. He went back to his office, closed the door, kept on writing. Alexander Graham Bell, when he presented his telephone to Western Union, the executives at Western Union, what use could this company make of an electronic toy? Louis Pasteur ranked 15 out of 22 chemistry students as an undergrad. Again, Thomas Edison, his teacher said he was too stupid to learn anything. Winston Churchill failed the 6th grade. Albert Einstein didn't read until he was 7 years old. Lucille Ball, the head instructor, John Murray Anderson Drama School. Try any other profession, Lucille. She kept at it. Walt Disney. The newspaper editor that Walt Disney worked at said that he lacks imagination and has no good ideas. He went bankrupt 3 times before Disneyland clicked. Gertrude Stein submitted poems to editors for 20 years. She didn't give up. Charles Schulz, every cartoon he wrote rejected by his high school yearbook staff. Dr. Seuss, his first book was rejected by 27 different publishers. He kept picking himself up. He kept pushing forward. Sidney Poitier, casting director, why don't you stop wasting people's time, go out and become a dishwasher or something? Thankfully, Sidney did not. He kept at it, and he got the last laugh. Harrison Ford, similar story. You ain't got it, kid, you ain't got it, now get out of here. Jerry Seinfeld, first stand-up routine. He was booed off the stage. Michael Jordan, cut from his high school basketball team. Elon Musk, one of my heroes. 3 of the SpaceX rockets blew up. If the 4th had blown up, he would have had to declare bankruptcy. He was prepared to live in his mother-in-law's basement. Thankfully, the 4th launch worked, and today he's worth somewhere north of $13 billion. So what makes these people unique, memorable, incredible? I would argue that it's a mix of attributes: tenacity, curiosity, creativity, flexibility. But I think the most important asset is tenacity. Another word for that is grit, determination, a refusal, a stubborn, bullheaded refusal to give up. Keep going. I am not going to stop. You are not going to get the last laugh. And what I would argue for you, don't wait. The earlier you start, the greater the odds of building something of value. Start now. Take advantage of the incubators. Keep your costs close to zero. Give it away. Get something out there. And then once you have something out there, you can make it better, faster. A startup is sort of a combination of a marathon and bad ballet. You make it up as you go. And embrace your inner failure. You're going to fail. Accept it, embrace it. You fail until you succeed. But there's always a path forward. There really is. And it's intoxicating. There's no better feeling on the planet than having your own business and plotting your own destiny. We're moving into analytics and Internet of Things and data. We think that's the future. I'm not done. I'm going to keep doing this as long as I can draw a breath. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." America is a nation of dreamers and doers. I would say that big dreams are great, but a flexible, tenacious group of pragmatists willing to fail forward is even better. My hope for you is that you make this work. You find your own path forward. And that you take advantage of the amazing resources you have right here. Learn from other people's mistakes, but know that you're going to make your own mistakes. Don't give up. Don't give in. Keep pushing forward, keep failing until you succeed. That's my hope for you. Thank you very much.